The big stories of the day with wit, insight and fearless energy.
Man of the people.
It's all vibe.
Just a filing cabinet on wheels with a tie on.
So, order in Friday Night Live with me, Mark Dolan, every Friday at 8, only on GBNews, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Hi there, I'm Michelle Dewberry and I'm going to take a second to tell you all about my show, Dubes & Co. We start off with the issues of the day. We then bring in both sides of the arguments. We get rid of the disrespect. And then you throw me into the mix. And trust me, I'll tell it exactly how it is. And then, of course, the magic ingredient, you at home. We mix it all together and what have we got, in my opinion, the best debate show in town. Monday to Friday, 6 till 7 on GB News, Britain's news channel.
Join me, Camilla Tominey, for a frank and honest discussion with those in power that cuts through the spin and gets to the heart of the issues shaping our nation.
You haven't confirmed that you want to stand as leader, but you haven't ruled it out either.
This report basically says that he's not fit to stand trial.
Is he indecisive? Incompetent? I deliver the dose of reality Westminster needs. That's the Camilla Tominey Show at 9:30 every Sunday on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
It's 9 p.m. This is Patrick Christys Tonight with me, Ben Leo.
You want us, the public, to trust you, to like you, to think he's the man for the job, he's doing what he needs to do. Your approval rating is lower than Nigel Farage's right now.
Oof, ITV's competitions guy does a better job of holding the PM to account than the fawning mainstream media. So just why have millions of Brits sign the petition demanding a snap general election?
Had this sort of thermal jacket that she just wore all day long, so she didn't have to put the heating up very high. That's an awful position to put a pensioner in.
Was it the porcupines about pensioners?
The commitment to 2.5% is absolute.
The bluster about defence spending?
They sit in hotels and digs for months on end at the taxpayers' expense.
The false promise to end migrant hotels?
I will restore standards in public life with a total crackdown on cronyism.
Or the lie about wanting to clean up cronyism? We'll deep dive into Labour's first 6 months in power next. Also tonight, a new book for children claims refugees are good for the economy and enrich our culture. Do you agree? And elsewhere, woke Brighton Council apologised for throwing a dead man's belongings in a skip before his only remaining family member could retrieve them. His heartbroken brother joins me live. And as Kate Nash admits she's flogging pictures on OnlyFans, is selling saucy snaps online the same as prostitution? Tonight's panel are ready to go. I'm joined by Daily Express columnist Carol Malone, campaigner and political activist Samuel Sweek, and the former MP and chairman of the Conservative Party, Jake Berry. And what do you reckon Donald Trump will say to Sadiq Khan's invite?
I'd like to use this opportunity to invite President-elect Trump to next year's Pride in London.
How long before Angela Rayner becomes Prime Minister? First, your news headlines with Joe Casper.
Good evening, it's 2 minutes past 9. I'm Joe Casper in the GB newsroom. 2 British tourists are missing after a boat sunk in the Red Sea off Egypt. The Foreign Office says it is supporting several British nationals and their families. 2 Brits are said to be among the 28 rescued. The governor of the Red Sea region said the yacht was carrying 44 people and a high sea wave hit the vessel, causing it to capsize in about 5 or 7 minutes. Rescue efforts are ongoing, led by the military and local officials. The Environment Secretary says more flooding is likely this week following the devastation caused by Storm Bert, which has claimed 5 lives. The storm, which swept across England and Wales over the weekend, brought torrential rain, flooding and 80-mile-an-hour winds. In Northamptonshire, a major incident has been declared as heavy rainfall caused severe flooding, overwhelming local emergency services with more than 800 calls. Authorities there are urging the public to only dial 999 when there is a risk to life. 12 British soldiers have been injured in a major crash in Estonia involving 2 minibuses transporting NATO troops. 8 of those, most seriously injured, were airlifted to the UK, with 3 still in hospital. The crash on Friday involved 6 vehicles near the Russian border. The soldiers serving on NATO's Operation Cabaret were on their way back from their base in Tapa. An RAF jet was deployed to evacuate them, transferring them to the Queen Elizabeth Hospital in Birmingham. In the US, prosecutors have moved to drop their criminal case against Donald Trump. Special counsel Jack Smith dropped all 4 felony charges against the president-elect related to his alleged attempts to overturn the 2020 presidential election. Mr. Trump, who was indicted in August 2023, faced charges including conspiracy to defraud the US and obstruction of an official proceeding. And Rachel Reeves has ruled out tax rises for the rest of this parliament as she defended her budget. The Chancellor told business leaders it has brought stability to the economy, saying public services must now live within their means. Speaking at the Confederation of British Industry conference, she said difficult decisions were needed to draw a line under the inheritance from the previous government. She also dismissed calls for big tax rises on businesses, saying the economy is now on firm footing.
We have now drawn a line under the inheritance that I faced. Public finances are now on a firm footing, and also our public services are funded in a proper way. And we've now set the envelope for those public services for the rest of this Parliament, which means we're not going to have to come back for more.
Those are your latest GB News headlines. For now, I'm Joe Casper. More in an hour. Now back to Ben Leo.
For the very latest GB News direct to your smartphone, sign up to News Alerts by scanning the QR code or go to gbnews.com/alerts.
Evening, hope you're well. Now, nothing personal to ITV's Andy Peters. I actually think he's quite a good bloke, but it's a sad state of affairs when the competitions guy proves more capable holding the Prime Minister to account than the rest of the fawning mainstream media.
I'm not surprised that many of them want a rerun. That isn't how our system works.
You want us, the public, to trust you, to like you, to think he's the man for the job, he's doing what he needs to do. Your approval rating is lower than Nigel Farage's right now, which even saying it to the Prime Minister of the country I live in, that I pay tax in, to say your approval rate is lower than Nigel Farage, that's disappointing. Whoever I support.
The thing is, if you make your mind up, as I have done, that we're going to do the difficult things first, then I think it's inevitable that people do feel they're difficult decisions. I mean, I understand that.
Keir Starmer was, of course, reacting to this bombshell petition calling for a snap general election. Millions of people have now signed it. And I know nothing is ever going to come of this petition. Let's start with that. But Sir Keir Starmer, in that clip, has already laughed it off in the only arrogant way he knows best. But one thing we can conclude is that in just a short few months, Labour has lost whatever little goodwill it had, including from people who voted for them. There's just been too many howlers and barefaced lies. Take this one, for example, from April.
Dewsbury, winter before last, in the height of the energy prices going up, and spoke to an 84-year-old woman, worked all her life, obviously now a pensioner, and she told me that she doesn't get out of bed till midday because she didn't want to turn the heating on.
Yeah, it's awful.
And then when she did get out of bed, she had this sort of thermal jacket that she just wore all day long, so she didn't have to put the heating up very high. That's an awful position to put a pensioner in.
Well, he didn't seem to care that much, did he? We also had the pledge to boost defence by 2.5%, matching Rishi Sunak.
The commitment to 2.5% is absolute, and we will get to that 2.5%. It is very important. We need to do that within our fiscal rules.
Well, on Friday, it was announced that Labour were actually sending £500 million worth of military gear to the scrap heap. And what about ending the use of migrant hotels? Seems like the residents of the migrant hotel are using this private residence estate as a shortcut. Look, jumping the fence. Excuse me. Why are they jumping the fence here? Where have they been? Are they allowed to access the hotel from this way? Because they're jumping over residents' fences. I revealed during a show last week, of course, that migrant hotels were now popping up all over the country again. Then there's the cronyism.
To change Britain, we must change ourselves.
We need to clean up politics. No more VIP fast lanes, no more kickbacks for colleagues, no more revolving doors between government and the companies they regulate. I will restore standards in public life with a total crackdown on cronyism.
And what happened next? They handed out plum civil service jobs to party donors, activists and aides like chocolate bars at Willy Wonka's factory. The civil service, of course, is meant to be politically neutral. And what about this one?
You have given us a clear mandate, and we will use it to deliver change, to restore service and respect to politics, end the era of noisy performance, tread more lightly on your lives, and unite our country.
Tread more lightly on our lives. Well, 6 months on, Starmer's own backbencher, the Labour chair of the Energy Committee, dropped this bombshell. When asked at a conference last week if people would be forced to change their lives to hit the 2030 net zero targets, Mr Esterson said, "Clearly, whenever there is a big change, people have to change their lives. So absolutely, yes." His remarks directly contradict Sir Keir Starmer's claim earlier in November that the government can hit its climate targets without telling people how to behave. I could go on and on and on with these examples, but I'd be here all night. Like most governments of the past, this lot have been caught with their pants down on multiple occasions. And what this petition shows is the public have already, after just 6 months, had enough of it. No surprise then to see a damning new poll that shows 70% of Brits think the country is now worse off under Keir Starmer. The Prime Minister won't be able to laugh this off for long because he may have won a majority in July, but the PM actually got a lower vote share than Jeremy Corbyn, let me remind you, something he recognised in his this morning interview. That's why I don't think he'll make it to the next election. I think he'll be out on his backside before Brits ever have a chance to head to the polls again. And if you think this socialist government is bad, just wait until Angela Rayner picks up the keys to number 10, because in my book, it's only a matter of time. Let's get the thoughts of my panel now. Daily Express columnist Carol Malone, campaigner and political activist Samuel Sweet, and former MP and chairman of the Conservative Party, Jake Berry. Good evening, panel.
Yeah,
welcome
hello.
along. Carol Malone, Elon Musk was tweeting earlier today. He was saying that the UK is a tyrannical police state. Has he got a point? And what do you make of Angela Rayner, PM?
Well, he has got a point. I make absolutely nothing of Angela Rayner as PM. You know, the fact that Elon Musk has tweeted about this has attracted global headlines. Hugely embarrassing for a government that's only been in power for 5 minutes. And, you know, you're saying Starmer should go. He will cling on till his fingernails bleed. He has worked very hard to get this job, and he wants to stay, and he's not going to go lightly.
Do you think the pressure's piling on, though? You've got tweets from Elon Musk, you've got polls...
He won't go. And the thing is that Angela Rayner only appeals to a very small section of the Labour Party, the hard line of the Labour Party. She doesn't appeal to the mass of the Labour Party. She certainly doesn't appeal to the mass of voters out there. The thing is, you know, even this petition, 2.5 million signatures now, Starmer still doesn't get it. A spokesman said today that he's focused on the issues that affect the British people. You've just read out a whole load of stuff there that shows he absolutely is not focused on the stuff that affects British people. He's freezing pensioners to death. He's going to make businesses go bust, employ less people, so that's going to be fewer jobs, which will affect growth. He's actually crippling the farmers so they can put more pylons and solar panels on their land. He's made us almost a police state now. He's trying to police our speech and our thought. He is not doing what the British people want. He's doing the polar opposite. That's not mentioned. He's race to net zero, all of that. So now he's doing the opposite of what people want, which is why his approval ratings are now minus 38%, dropped 49 points since the election.
Jake, what do you make of this petition, and where's it come from? And do you agree with me that nothing really is going to come of it? They're not going to cause snap election?
Well, look, to deal with that first, Keir Starmer said in that interview, he gave a quote about it, and I'll read it. He said, you know, I'm not surprised many people want a rerun. He's talking about the election there. That's not how our system works. I'm sorry to say he is right. No matter how many people sign this petition, we're not going to get a rerun. But that is rich coming from Keir Starmer after he was the man who campaigned for the second referendum repeatedly to try and overturn Brexit. He's right. That's not how our system works. That didn't stop him trying to have a second referendum and overturn Brexit. And the speed at which people have signed this petition speaks to people's anger. And what they're angry, most people just don't care about politicians and what goes on in Westminster day to day. They look at it a bit at the general election to think who should they vote for. But the British people have got a great nose, and they can smell dishonesty and a lie. And the lie at the heart of this Labour government is they weren't going to put taxes up. And everything they've done since then in the budget, with the national insurance rise, the tax on farmers, the tax on small businesses, has been the cover-up of that lie. And the British people have seen the cover-up and they say, look, we've had enough, we wish we could do something about it. I'm afraid that nothing will happen.
Samuel, do you think the pressure is on Starmer? My theory is that Angela Rayner at some point will come in and take over the reins because the pressure is just going to be far too much, whether that's in 6 months or in 2 years or in 3 years. What's your thoughts?
I don't know if the pressure is necessarily on him, but you would like to think that, you know, the strength of feeling that a lot of people hold towards this start of this Labour government, you know, should set off alarm bells in Downing Street. Obviously, as I said, there has to be, to some extent, although very little, some benefit of the doubt. We're very, very early on into that. But again, as I said, it's worrying. But you don't need to speak to people like me about the duplicity of Keir Starmer. I'm not a member of the Labour Party.
You're a Corbynite, aren't you, Sam?
I'm not a member of the Labour Party.
Well, your man got more votes than Keir Starmer.
He did, and the reason for that, and you know, like my overall general point about why Starmer's popularity ratings are plunging, is that he went into an election on a campaign for pledges of change, material things that people would see and feel in their bank accounts, in their communities, and has delivered none of that. The difference between him and Jeremy Corbyn in that respect is that Corbyn's manifestos offered hope and something that people could see and something people could feel.
And they were honest. I mean, that, I think, is the big challenge. Is if you read the petition, it says, in terms, we were lied to, this is a false premise for an election, and we want another election. Whatever you say about Jeremy Corbyn, he was absolutely honest with the British people about what he wanted.
Isn't the point of Starmer as well? The Labour Party never, I know you're not a member, the Labour Party never really wanted him, but he was safe after the drama of Corbyn. That's how they saw him. But they were never in love with him because he's robotic and lacks passion. And most important of all, he lacks political intuition. He only became an MP when he was 54.
He's a bit like Rishi Sunak in that regard.
Well, no, he's not. No, Sunak was closer to people than Starmer is. He just doesn't get it.
Well, I was laughing during my monologue there. I was laughing in between the clips. I was laughing my head off at Keir Starmer's reaction on This Morning when Andy Peters was saying your approval rating is lower than Nigel Farage. Starmer's face, I don't know if we've got closer an image of that we can show, but Starmer's face was just completely robotic. He was... But
it's also a stupid thing to say because Farage's rating is pretty damn good. So the fact that fancy putting Andy Peters up, you kind of alluded to it, to interview the Prime Minister. God Almighty!
That's not, by the way, that's not a slice on Andy Peters.
But it is because he doesn't do politics, and to say that to make that sort of statement is silly. Challenge him on what he does, not on the fact he's less popular than Nigel Farage, which is untrue.
In Andy Peters' defence, Starmer went on to talk about drink spiking, I think, which with him and Cat he probably would have been OK. But, Samuel, would you rather a Tory government or this Starmer government?
Well, I mean, I actually really, and I think a lot of people would agree with me, wouldn't be able to tell you the difference between that. If you look at people like Starmer, the other day, proudly tweeting about meeting with executives from BlackRock, you know, tying himself to the city. You know, people are struggling. People are going to food banks. There are more food banks in this country than there are McDonald's. You know, Keir Starmer is cozying up to banking executives and, like, you know, not, like, targeting the super rich with any sort of wealth tax. But, you know, we're talking now as well about Liz Kendall, the Work and Pension Secretary, wanting to bring in some of what sounds like the most punishing and punitive cuts to state welfare. Yeah. They're punching down.
What, by telling young people they should get a job? That's punitive, isn't
it? Well, look, can I play devil's advocate? In Starmer's defence and the Labour government's defence, they would argue they found this massive black hole, they didn't realise it was there, they've had a lot of work to do that they didn't know about.
All of that would be a lie, because they knew all the projections that existed. The black hole is not a black hole, it was projections for the next year, so it wasn't actually a hole. They knew all about it before they ever told the government.
Refused to sign the Office Budget Responsibility, if you like. The accountant for all government spending refused to sign off on Labour's lie of a £22 billion black hole. Look, politics is about choices, isn't it? And they are choosing to take winter fuel payments away from pensioners, not to support our military. And you know what? The thing about the farmers' protest, when I was at the farmers' protest, one of the farmers said to me, at least in Zimbabwe, they're honest. When Robert Mugabe wants to steal your farm, they come up the drive with guns. He said, the Labour Party is going to take it away from my children.
You're comparing farmers to Mugabe? I mean, that's a bit unfair, Jake.
On which one?
Oh my God.
But at least in other countries where they appropriate your land and your wealth and things like that, they have the honesty to do it. They come with a gun and take it away from them. This is so dishonest.
But
You're trying to hide it in this black hole.
You have Reeves today saying her policies are working. No, they're not. We're going to talk about it in the next
growth
debate.
Growth
they're
has
not
disappeared.
working. Growth has dropped.
Yeah, OK, all right, yeah, we will tackle that. Rachel Reeves, I mean, throughout the whole election campaign, they were saying growth, 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 and we've had the first 3 months and it's 0.1%. Again, though, playing devil's advocate, I will say that they have blamed this black hole. However, Rachel Reeves did say in the run-up to the election, she gave this interview to the Financial Times, she said, quote, "I cannot just turn up to Downing Street on day one and say that there's a black hole because we've seen the books in advance. There's no way I can say that." And she did exactly that. So.
And every policy was costed and they weren't going to put tax up. A lie.
Okay. They put out a manifesto, and then as soon as he got across the steps of Downing Street, he chucked it in the bin.
And that's why the public are angry.
Yeah.
OK, panel, you'll be back very shortly. Coming up next, though, a children's book used in school and stocks in local libraries is urging school children to write to their MPs and tell them how much refugees, quote, enrich society. It even claims that asylum seekers drive growth in the economy. What do you think about that? Is this just a blatant attempt to indoctrinate our kids? Going head-to-head on that are the political commentators Charlie Downs and the human rights lawyer Shoaib Khan. Back in a tick.
This is GB News, Britain's news channel.
Online dating apps are still the go-to for millions of British adults, with 1 in 10 using them to look for a romantic connection.
Yes, are you one of them? Let us know. But with many apps introducing subscription fees and complex algorithms, the world of online dating has never been harder to navigate. So who better to join us to discuss this than Mr. Tinder himself, Stéphane Pierre Tomlin. You have been dubbed Britain's best-looking eligible bachelor.
Yeah, so this happened back in 2016. Got an email from Tinder, and it was like, "You're the most swiped man on Tinder."
So just explain to us, for viewers who don't know, what is swiping? What does that mean on Tinder?
Yeah, so on Tinder, the app, if you swipe left, that means you don't like the person in front of you, and if you swipe to the right, that means you like that person.
So do you mind still being associated with that? It's a good thing.
Well, it made me who I am now, and I love sharing how I was successful, and now I'm like a dating expert.
What's your situation now? Are you with anyone? Are you still single, paying the bill?
So I'm seeing someone at the minute. Things are going well, and I'm a dating expert, so I'm always giving advice to people.
Does she know your title of most swiped?
Of course, who doesn't? It's quite hard. It's quite hard being the most swiped man on Tinder because you get a label on you. So I find it harder than anyone else, to be honest.
And where did you meet her? That's the big question.
At an event.
So not on Tinder?
Not on Tinder, ironically. Yeah.
So for all that troubled online, there's actually a real life rendezvous. Which
I mean, I have met people on Tinder in the past, and it has worked. Well, it didn't work, but yeah.
I need to know how to do the famous Stefan Smolder.
That camera is not a camera. That is your best friend, that's your lover. So you really smiles from the camera, so it goes like this.
GB News, the People's Channel.
Good Afternoon Britain isn't just about us. The wonderful thing about this programme is it's about everyone watching. It's an interactive programme.
Well, there absolutely is something to see here, and we're going to be talking about it more. Whether it's breaking royal news, Will, please bring us up to date, or indeed a particularly punchy speech in the House of Commons.
Very, very curious.
We bring it to you live, and then we bring you live reaction as well.
That's Good Afternoon Britain, weekdays from midday.
Only on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
I'm Christopher Hope. From pop stars to politicians, I'll interview anybody in a pub who's got a political opinion. Join me every Friday on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, YouTube or gbnews.com, or wherever you get your podcasts.
This is GB News, the People's Channel.
Weekdays on GB News. Wake up to breakfast every day from 6 a.m. Followed by Britain's newsroom at 9:30. At noon, it's Good Afternoon Britain. Followed by Martin Daubney from 3 p.m. Only on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Every Saturday, 10 till 12, we'll bring you all of the news that you need to know. We'll also remind you that there is so much to smile about.
It's my favourite time of the week. I get to relax, enjoy some light-hearted stories, and let Ellie teach me about fashion too.
That's Saturday Morning Live, every Saturday, 10 till 12.
Only on GB News, Britain's news channel.
Patrick Christys tonight with me, Ben Leo, only on GB News. Time now for the head-to-head. And a children's book that claims refugees enrich our country and drive growth has sparked outrage. After it emerged, it's stocked by local council libraries and has even been distributed to schools. The picture book, called Lift the Flap, Questions and Answers About Refugees, was created with help from the Refugee Council and states that, quote, we all have roots in other countries. Teaching material provided alongside the book suggests that school kids should write to MPs and express how much refugees, quote, enrich our countries. And the book goes on to claim that, quote, people in power can do a lot to help refugees and asylum seekers, but they don't always choose to. So tonight, I'm asking, is this book a blatant attempt to indoctrinate children? And do refugees enrich our culture? Let me know your thoughts by heading to gbnews.com/yoursay or tweet me at GBNews. And while you're there, vote in the poll. I'll bring you the results very shortly. Going head-to-head on this now are political commentator Charlie Downs and the human rights lawyer Shoaib Khan. Good evening to you both. Charlie Downs, do refugees enrich British culture?
I think the evidence speaks for itself, to be honest, because the word refugee in the modern context calls to mind images of fighting-age men from the most dangerous regions of the world crossing the channel to our country illegally and then being put up in luxury hotels at the taxpayer's expense. So do refugees enrich us? No, I'd say quite the opposite.
What about what they bring? I mean, say, for example, they get asylum. What about the rich array of food that they bring? I mean, I went down Edgware Road in London on Friday, got a really brilliant Iraqi meal, you know, some delicious beans and meat and hummus and so on and so on. I mean, that's one example of enriching our culture, no?
Well, it's funny you say that, because in this very book it says, without migration, we would not have access to the vast array of multicultural foods that we are lucky to enjoy. So maybe that is one of the ways that it enriches us, but I would say that it's not really worth the trade-offs, which are massive increases in crime of the worst sort, cultural erosion, destruction of social trust and social fabric, a feeling of unsafeness for children and women in the communities where these, again, predominantly young men are put up, as we've seen recently across the country, actually. So again, you know, sure, nice food. I'm quite cosmopolitan. I enjoy, you know, foreign foods and all this sort of thing, but we have the recipes. So I don't think we need to be importing the entire populations of these countries to our own.
Shoaib Khan, your response, please, to Charlie's claims there that, you know, you get spikes in crime with asylum seekers or migrants and so on. What do you think of that?
Oh, well, firstly, that's not true. And again, I mean, for someone who's saying the figures speak for themselves, the evidence speaks for itself. Well, yes, I mean, there is no spike. And I mean, obviously, those are something that can be proven statistically. Asylum seekers and refugees are not more prone to commit crimes. If anything, they have a lower crime rate compared to other people. So no, that's not true anyway, is the first thing. But secondly, I mean, I think we need to be looking beyond those things as well. So I mean, in terms of obviously, you know, culture we're talking about, I mean, we spoke about food, but yeah, generally literature, arts, culture, there's so much that they bring to us. And secondly, even if they, you know, anything that we think they should be able to contribute more, the point is that's problems we have because we don't allow them to integrate. I mean, why are they living in hotels in the first place? We don't live in hotels. We don't spend months and years in hotels. Why are they in hotels? And secondly, why aren't they allowed to work? I mean, so many of them, they might be chefs, they might be writers, they may be playwrights, they might be, you know, so many other professionals. And why are they not allowed to work? Why do they have to be, you know, we force them not to work. We force them to stay in a hotel. We spend billions on doing that. And I think that's just part of the small-mindedness where we think they're somehow different to us. No, they're just normal people. They have families, you know, whether the families are with them or they want the families to follow later. You know, I mean, they just want to work and earn a living and live a peaceful life like the rest of us.
Charlie, think of the playwrights, will you?
Hey, maybe so. I mean, Britain is responsible for some of the greatest playwrights, authors, artists in human history. So I don't really see why we need to be importing people from the third world to fulfill these roles. But I would also add that I would encourage viewers to look at Mr. Khan's website, where he proudly states that he makes his money from facilitating legal and illegal migration into the UK, listing his expertises as migration, migration bail, and asylum. This is a man who has had a career of 20+ years in this industry. So when he sings the praises of migrants, it's only because that is how he makes his living.
Shoaib Khan, your response to that?
I don't think I'm going to respond to that. I mean, I don't really see how any of that is relevant to what that means, really. The point is refugees and asylum seekers do make a huge contribution to our lives. I don't know if you know any of you. I mean, you have particularly, sort of refugees, asylum seekers. You know any neighbors, friends, others? I have colleagues, I have clients, I have all sorts of people who are refugees and former refugees.
Okay.
And that's the thing. I mean, like he was saying, that obviously the image it brings to our minds, but that's the thing, because we're so petty-minded, small-minded, narrow-minded, that's the image that comes to us. But the point is, we don't even have to look far. The point is, just the past 50, 60, 100 years, look at the groups of people who came to the UK as refugees. Are we seriously saying all they brought to us was crime? I think that's an appalling thing to say.
Shoaib, what about the claim in the book, and this is going to school children, what about the claim that it's good for the economy? Because latest GDP figures from the last 6 months alone show that GDP per capita, which is the true measurement of how wealthy an individual is in the UK, that's been contracting at the same time as immigration has been exploding. So how does that square up?
Well, that squares up because we don't let them work. I don't know why we don't. Why can't they just work and pay tax or at least support themselves? So, of course, it's going to contract. There's millions of people who turn up, and then we say, no, you have to stay locked up in a hotel. You're not allowed to work. We'll feed you, we'll clothe you, we'll pay for your accommodation. Oh, just a few billion. And then we spend 500, 700 million pounds to Rwanda. And as people say, we sent more home secretaries there than asylum seekers. So that's why, of course, the economy is going to contract. No one has any idea what to do. Okay. I mean, this government is doing exactly the same as them. For them, it was stop the boats. For them, it's smash the gangs. We're just throwing away money at it. No one has any idea how to control it. Hundreds of millions.
OK, Charlie, we just need to let them work. That will sort the problem out.
Well, these are men, again, primarily, who we don't know where they're from. We don't know what their intentions are. Again, tend to over-index in crime. Migrants in general are 34% more likely to commit crime. So this claim by Mr. Khan here that migrants are under-indexing crime is a falsehood, presumably to drive customers to his business. But I can't imagine anything more reckless and stupid than allowing foreign men from we know not where to just integrate into the economy. I mean, many of them already work illegally delivering food through companies like Deliveroo, and that itself is deeply troubling. It's only right that people who are criminals, because they have entered our country illegally, therefore by definition they are criminals, be detained. Because again, we don't know what these men are capable of, and really, there's only one reason that you would enter this country illegally, because it's far more expensive to do that than to come here legally, and that's because you don't want your name on the books. And there's only one reason that you wouldn't want your name on the books, and that's because you're a criminal.
OK, Shoaib, last word to you.
Well, I don't really know what to say. I mean, if that's really the argument here, that they think that people who turn up are people just... I mean, what's the right... How does an asylum seeker come to the UK legally? Is there a legal route for asylum seekers? How do these people turn up? There is no legal route. So I have no idea. And that's the thing. So many people just keep repeating, join the queue, don't jump. What queue? There is no queue, and that's the problem. There is no legal way for an asylum seeker to arrive in the UK.
OK.
Or is there something I'm missing?
All right, Shoaib Khan, thank you for your contributions this evening. Charlie Downs, you too. Thank you. Appreciate it. OK, so what do you think at home? Who do you agree with? Do refugees enrich our culture? Steve-O on X says, I bet those who said yes have purple hair. Ryan on X says, I enjoy travelling and part of that involves experiencing different cultures in another country, so I don't want to travel somewhere like Bradford and feel like I'm a foreigner in England. And your verdict is now in. Just 4% of you agree refugees enrich our culture. 96% of you say they don't. OK, pretty damning. Coming up, the heartbroken brother of 29-year-old Chris Byrne, who died from a drug overdose in temporary council accommodation, has been left devastated after Brighton and Hove City Council threw his brother's belongings into a skip. Can you believe this? He tells me his devastating story live in the studio next.
Hello, good evening. Welcome to your GB News weather update from the Met Office. After a blustery day, we are going to see winds ease into this evening, leaving a mix of clear spells and showers tonight, and it is going to be turning rather chilly under those clearer skies too. Storm Bert, currently sat to the northeast of the UK, will eventually move its way over to Scandinavia. It does leave behind some blustery winds and some outbreaks of rain for a time, though these will eventually ease away overnight. Still plenty of blustery showers though moving through, particularly around western coasts, and these may linger on for a time, bringing longer spells of rain at times too, particularly across parts of the south. Further inland across central and southeastern areas, we're likely to see plenty of clearer skies, so a risk of frost, perhaps even some fog patches by the time we reach tomorrow morning. So through around Scotland, we are still going to continue to see plenty of showers, mainly around coasts, though a few feeding inland at times too. Under clearer skies, though, it is going to be feeling chilly with a risk of frost. Still plenty of showers around coasts of Northern Ireland, northwest England too. Drier and clearer further east, and generally across parts of England and Wales, it is going to be a much clearer start to the day. Once again, a risk of frost, perhaps even some fog patches by the time we reach the morning. But overall on Tuesday, it is set to be a much brighter day. Still can't rule out some showers, mainly around northwestern coasts, perhaps just feeding inland and across northern parts of England at times. But overall a brighter day, plenty of sunshine, and with much lighter winds, it's likely to feel much more pleasant compared to this afternoon. That's away from northeastern coasts of Scotland though, still some blustery winds here and still plenty of showers moving through. Now heading into Wednesday, we'll see a bit of a split in the weather. Outbreaks of rain across the south, some blustery winds. This rain could linger for a time across central and parts of southeast England. But to the north of this, plenty of clear skies, plenty of sunny spells, still just a few showers around coastal areas. And to finish off the week, likely to see some foggy and frosty mornings, but still plenty of sunshine by day. Bye for now.
Hi there, I'm Michelle Dewberry and I'm going to take a second to tell you all about my show, Dubes & Co. We start off with the issues of the day. We then bring in both sides of the argument. We get rid of the disrespect. And then you throw me into the mix. And trust me, I'll tell it exactly how it is. And then, of course, the magic ingredient, you at home. We mix it all together and what have we got, in my opinion, the best debate show in town. Monday to Friday, 6 till 7 on GB News, Britain's news channel.
Join me, Camilla Tominey, for a frank and honest discussion with those in power that cuts through the spin and gets to the heart of the issues shaping our nation.
You haven't confirmed that you want to stand as leader, but you haven't ruled it out either.
This report basically says that he's not fit to stand trial. Is he indecisive? Incompetent? I deliver the dose of reality Westminster needs. That's the Camilla Tominey Show at 9:30 every Sunday on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
If you want your news to be straight talking... This is the nightmare for the Conservatives again. Down to earth. It's not just Nottingham where this is happening, is it? And most importantly, honest. Hard-working, middle-class taxpayers, they'll get their book thrown at them. Then catch me, Martin Daubney, Monday to Friday, 3 till 6 p.m. on GB News, Britain's news channel.
I'm Simon Evans, and this is GB News, Britain's news channel.
Patrick Christys tonight with me, Ben Leo, only on GB News. Now, the grieving brother of 29-year-old Chris Byrne, who died from a drug overdose in temporary council accommodation, has been left heartbroken after Brighton and Hove City Council threw his brother's belongings into a skip following his death. Simon Byrne had made an appointment with officials to collect his brother's possessions. However, when he arrived, he discovered Chris's accommodation had already been cleared out, with previous items, such as a bracelet, thrown in the skip amongst other rubbish. Simon was forced to search through the skip himself to try and find the possessions, and I'm joined now by Simon himself. Simon, welcome to the show. Very sorry about your brother's death, and indeed what happened afterwards, which must have been just, frankly, quite unbelievable having to deal with that. Just explain to me what happened. When did Chris die? It was from an overdose, I understand. And how did you first discover that the council had just literally ransacked his flat?
Well, he was discovered in his, to put it mildly, substandard accommodation. And his name was identified through an old passport, which had in the back of it the name of a previous foster carer, who then managed to get in touch with me to tell me what had happened. And it was a couple of days later I got in touch with the council who had placed him at the accommodation to arrange to collect his belongings. As you say, I made an appointment with them for a particular date and time, and then I would be there to collect it. And I did also say to them, and it was agreed, that they would be prepared for me to peruse and take what things I may wish to keep as memories of him.
And you were fair to say, the last remaining, or at least the last person of your family who was in contact with your brother.
That's right,
You were the only person he had, really, as family. And he died how? Was it a drug overdose? Is that right? Accidental.
He did. Yes, he had been abstinent for some time, and upon attempting, and in some cases pleading, to be moved from his accommodation, which was inappropriate. Following that, he did take a substance and subsequently died from it.
And the inquest found it was an accident, of course, and then... Yeah. So this happens, you're dealing with the absolute grief of dealing with that. You go to the flat, you find that all his belongings have gone, what few things he had, and then you're faced with what? Literally rifling through a skip full of rubbish outside.
So when I initially went, I identified myself to them, as was arranged, and they pointed to a small suitcase in their little cabin, which really baffled me, because it's like this is not it. So I asked, and at the time it felt strange, but I was glad I did. I asked to go and see his room, and there was nothing in it, and I was just baffled by it because I'd arranged the appointment and all these kind of things. And so they took me back down and pointed to the large skip, which had the contents, the entire contents of his room in it. Not much explanation whatsoever. So I went away for a short while and then thought, I'm going to go back. And I was told categorically that this is where all his belongings were. And I thought, do you know what? This is the only chance I've got. So I climbed into the skip.
Wow. Just because you had a hunch that there'd be something in there?
Not necessarily. I mean, there would have been things in there. There were very small items that I did manage to find. Very, very small, like a library card with his signature on and things like that. But it was. I need to know.
And what did the council say to you? So you've discovered his belongings in a skip. When you complained to them, what did you say and what was their response?
My first point was we'd arranged this. What happened? And they said, well, the cleaning people hadn't finished because. When I arrived there was also bodily substance there also. So they were very tight to the wire in terms of preparing it for the time that we had arranged. I arrived about 10 minutes early. And they said, oh, well, they hadn't quite finished doing what they were doing. And yes, it's all in the skip and it is being taken away.
Goodness me. Simon, what was your brother like? We saw some sweet pictures of you together there over the years. What was he like?
He was someone who, from his, how I describe him as someone that had the background that he did. He had a very pure soul and a remarkably good heart. Numerous people afterwards said, you know, one of the nicest guys you've ever met and things like that. And the truth is that, really, this is a question about how we treat and view the most vulnerable people in our society. Let's not pretend that they don't exist. Let's not overlook the very complex needs that some people have through no fault of their own, and whether it is through some fault of their own. These people do deserve help. And that didn't happen in this case. The accommodation was inappropriate. They knew that. It was repeatedly told to them. And then to compound it, if this is the way that he is treated and others are treated when he dies, how on earth were they treated when they were alive?
So, Simon, you think this may have happened because of his vulnerabilities, because he was an addict? Do you think maybe whoever was in the flat that day, whoever was making a decision from the council thought, well, it's just an addict, you know, he's only got a few silly things, a library card or a bracelet. Do you get the feeling that's what happened?
I don't think they would have necessarily thought that this young man would have had a library card, let me put it that way. As you describe an addict, there is a tendency across public institutions to label people. This is what you are, and we are going to keep you in that box. And try and find your way out of it. Sometimes people can't.
Do you miss your brother?
Terribly.
How often do you think of him?
Oh, all the time. All the time. There's always something.
And has this situation muddied for you your final memories of him in any way?
Those will never go. It almost, tragically, it confirmed something that I already knew, which was, I mean, it was bad enough that he passed away. And it just makes it worse, that you just go, do you know, and just, off you go.
Has it in any way stopped you from maybe grieving for your brother, or at least maybe halted the process?
It's made it more difficult. I wouldn't say it has stopped it, but that is a process which is individual for you know, people just across the spectrum, isn't it? But it certainly delayed it and caused a great deal of anguish in the run-up to arranging a thoroughly unexpected funeral for a 29-year-old young man.
Yeah, just a young lad. His whole life ahead of him. Mm-hmm. Simon, I'm really sorry you've gone through that. I've got two boys myself, 2 brothers, and I can imagine a life with one of them going on without the other. So thank you for sharing your story. I'm sorry that happened to you and your brother. And a spokesperson for Brighton Hove City Council said, first and foremost, our sympathies, of course, are with this person's family and friends. During the process of cleaning the property and making it suitable for the next of kin to visit, some items were unfortunately disposed of by our cleaning contractor. We do understand how important someone's belongings are to their friends and family and apologise for any additional distress and upset this caused in relation to this very sad loss. We no longer use the company involved in the clearing of this property. Simon, thank you again. Really appreciate it for sharing your story with us, and best wishes to you and your family. OK, coming up, the pop star Kate Nash has made the jaw-dropping decision to sell pictures online of herself on OnlyFans, believe it or not, in order to cover the cost of going on tour. And she's not the only one. Fellow singer Lily Allen's been raking in the cash as well by selling pictures of her feet on the website. So, is OnlyFans really an acceptable way to make extra cash? I'm joined by James Cowell, who quits his NHS job to work full-time at OnlyFans. Next.
Good Afternoon Britain isn't just about us. The wonderful thing about this programme is it's about everyone watching. It's an interactive programme.
Well, there absolutely is something to see here, and we're going to be talking about it more. Whether it's breaking royal news, Will, please bring us up to date, or indeed a particularly punchy speech in the House of Commons.
Very, very curious.
We bring it to you live, and then we bring you live reaction as well.
That's Good Afternoon Britain, weekdays from midday.
Only on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Headliners. Tomorrow's papers tonight, every night from 11 p.m.
The Daily Mail now, Josh, and pub landlords have to worry about more than the optics when it comes to offensive banter,
Yeah,
it
this
seems.
is a really big story and important. Pub landlords could have to become banter cops to stop themselves being sued by staff offended by comments from customers under workers' rights reform. So, Labour, when they were part of their election process, they were like, we're going to reform workers' rights, and that all sounds good on paper, but there were issues in terms of how might it affect employees and fear from employees costing them more money. One of these things that they're sort of pushing through, though, is that in the Equality Act of 2010, part of the issue was that if you were offended at work or someone said something sexist or racist, something that affected you, the employer had to take some sort of, they had three chances to kind of take action.
Yeah.
Now, the employer should have taken action already. So employees can sue employers. Now, this has a big impact on us because we're comics and we perform in venues. And if some of the bar staff hear a joke that they don't like, then they can sue their employer, potentially, under this legislation.
So it's not punters?
Well, also, it could be like you're at a bar and some bloke is like, oh, I like that top, or whatever. That's not good behaviour. But the point is now that employee could sue their employer.
So, because, I mean, the sort of scenario I was imagining was that a barmaid was being maybe sexually harassed or
That's
something.
what they're focusing in this article, but other articles have gone down the free speech route. Okay. And also venues and universities having lectures. We saw it at, in Edinburgh Fringe Festival and Sadowitz. he had a show cancelled because not because of any punters, but because two of the 18-year-olds were working. They were upset by his
There was a
winning.
bar in Brighton, wasn't there? There was a story we covered a few weeks ago. A bar in Brighton threw some people out. Because
exactly. They had turfs on the.
Turfs. Yeah.
GB News, the People's Channel.
Mark Dolan tonight is your weekend dose of news, debate and entertainment.
This sounds like a wild conspiracy theory.
Don't miss My Big Opinion. Mark Meets at My Take at 10.
Democracy is a funny old thing.
And we don't do boring, not on my watch. I just won't have it.
Let's go and get another glass of that bubbly. You've earned it.
That's Mark Dolan tonight, Saturday and Sunday, 9 to 11, only on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Patrick Christys tonight with me, Ben Leo, only on GB News. Now, the pop star Kate Nash has taken the extraordinary decision to sell pictures of her bum on the online subscription service OnlyFans in order to cover the cost of her music tours. Speaking to the BBC, of course, the singer said, "My industry is completely broken. I don't think it's sustainable, and so I do think people are going to have to find solutions to fund their art. I think it's quite empowering, and I'm also creating jobs with my bum now, for example. I couldn't bring a crew member that's on tour with me in the UK to Europe, but now I can because of my OnlyFans website." She's just the latest pop star to start selling pictures of themselves on the site. Fellow singer Lily Allen made roughly 10 grand every month last year by selling pictures of her feet. I'm joined now by the OnlyFans content creator, James Cow, who, James, I think, was it last year or the year before, you quit your NHS job to sell pictures of yourself on the net. How much are you still making?
It was 4 years ago now. In total, I've made around 260,000 in those 4 years.
Ah. And what kind of pictures are you selling? I mean, is it graphic? Is it videos? Is it just sort of cheeky pictures? What is it?
It's basically just showing a lot of my life. I mean, the biggest part of my job is turning up on Instagram, posting my daily life, but then obviously a very explicit version of the same thing as well. That's sort of how I managed to keep, pulling the numbers over from my Instagram over into OnlyFans.
So without going into too much detail, when you say a very explicit version, are we talking all the way, just full nudity, X-rated, it's porn, basically?
It's porn, basically, yeah. And it's every day, so it's just it's a more explicit version of what I'm doing on Instagram.
OK, and so I'm just working out how much you earn a year from that. So you're on about 65k a year?
That's right, yeah.
OK.
In comparison to the 12,000 I was earning as a healthcare assistant when I quit, which was COVID.
Wow, 12 grand at the NHS. So 65k a year, what do your friends and family think about it?
I mean, my mum and dad would much prefer it if you were, doing a normal job. I think
they still say that now, do they?
Yeah, of course they do. I think they think it's kind of a crazy way to live, but they appreciate how, bad the NHS was when I was working in it. And I think they appreciate the freedom OnlyFans gives me over what I had before in being locked into the 12-hour shifts. And obviously the new pressure of COVID at the time was kind of scary because we were looking after my nan at home. And when we were looking after Nan, it was like a new risk of infection for her. And it was like, it was just a really massive point in our lives of, what's important and what's not. And I think that just gave me the balls to just go, do you know what? OnlyFans doesn't seem so bad when the world is this crazy.
Literally, it gave you the balls to explore freedom and more time and more money. Look, I have a serious question for you. I had this debate in the office earlier. Is OnlyFans prostitution?
No.
Why not? I think it is. A lot of people in the office disagreed with me, but I think it's modern-day prostitution. Why am I wrong?
You're wrong because how can you prostitute through a screen? We're not on a street corner.
Well, because you're selling your body.
I'm selling my body, but I can't help that people want to see it.
No, that's fine. I'm not putting that down. You're making a pretty buck doing so. You're a good-looking lad. But you are still technically selling your body in exchange for, I guess, your customers get sexual gratification from it. So why isn't it prostitution?
Yeah, I call it art. I agree massively with what Kate said. I think it's an art. I think it's extremely hard work. I think you're selling your vocal cords when you're a singer, but you're also selling your body when you're an OnlyFans creator. You're selling your body either way. I don't call it prostitution. I just call it art. And, you know, everyone's art is different. Not everyone might appreciate my art. Some people might think it's gross. But my job is just to do what I know, what a small few like, and that's what I do.
OK, tell me, James, because I've never been on OnlyFans in my life, I promise. Who is your main... no, I'm not, honestly, I swear to God. Who's your main clientele, James? Is it men or women?
It's gay men.
OK. Younger, older, what sort of demographic?
I think there's a mix. I mean, I have had some women, but, it's, you know, we're talking like in the handfuls of women. But my demographic is gay men, mostly my age or older. I mean, you know, so...
So I'm just asking for a friend, do single or straight men have any success on OnlyFans, or is it particularly only for gay men or, say, women, you know, attractive heterosexual women?
A lot of straight men make gay content because...
Really?
Yeah. A lot of straight men pretend they're gay and create suggestively gay content because they know it makes more money than the more... You know, it's a more niche market, I guess. I don't know. I mean,
Okay.
What do you want to call it?
Interesting. All right. And James, what does the future hold for you? Are you going to continue down this route, or are you going to maybe try and sort of build up a bit of a nest egg before doing what your parents want to do and, I don't know, go and get a proper job? Is that something they tell you?
No, I mean, as long as this lasts and as long as social media keeps going, I'll be still doing this. And then when that ends, I'll look at maybe, I don't know, we'll see. But I think until then, I'm going to enjoy this and enjoy the freedom that it gives.
Well, look, it certainly sounds like easy money, especially for 65k a year. Of course, I guess you need the looks for it and the body as well, right? You can't just, you know, be a 3 out of 10 and expect to cash in.
I think you can be a 3 out of 10 and you can cash in. I think it's just how you market yourself and if you're willing to work hard, just like any job.
OK, well, there's luck for me yet then, 3 out of 10. Get there. OK, James, thank you very much. Appreciate it. Just one quick question. Where do you have a studio at home, or do you just do it on the move?
Wherever, just with live.
Right, just get your phone out.
Yeah.
Got it. James Cow, thank you very much, OnlyFans content creator.
Thanks very much, mate. Cheers. Bye-bye.
James. OK, yeah, interesting. Yeah, what do you think about that debate? Is it prostitution? I think it is, but lots of people in the office today said no. They seemed to suggest what James thought, and it was more art, but I don't know, maybe it's just my age. I'm just not buying it. Anyway, coming up at 10 p.m, the boss of McVitie's and Jacobs has become the latest industry leader to slam Labour's economic record. He said Britain's become a less attractive place to do business since Labour got into power. All that's coming up in just a tick. Before that, your weather.
Even though we'll see a cloudy start, it'll be a bright outlook for the rest of the day. Boxed Solar, sponsors of weather on GB News.
Hello, good evening. Welcome to your GB News weather update from the Met Office. After a blustery day, we are going to see winds ease into this evening, leaving a mix of clear spells and showers tonight, and it is going to be turning rather chilly under those clearer skies too. Storm Bert, currently sat to the northeast of the UK, will eventually move its way over to Scandinavia. It does leave behind some blustery winds and some outbreaks of rain for a time, though these will eventually ease away overnight. Still plenty of blustery showers though moving through, particularly around western coasts, and these may linger on for a time, bringing longer spells of rain at times too, particularly across parts of the south. Further inland across central and southeastern areas, we're likely to see plenty of clearer skies, so a risk of frost, perhaps even some fog patches by the time we reach tomorrow morning. So through around Scotland, we are still going to continue to see plenty of showers, mainly around coasts, though a few feeding inland at times too. Under clearer skies, though, it is going to be feeling chilly with a risk of frost. Still plenty of showers around coasts of Northern Ireland, northwest England too. Drier and clearer further east, and generally across parts of England and Wales, it is going to be a much clearer start to the day. Once again, a risk of frost, perhaps even some fog patches by the time we reach the morning. But overall on Tuesday, it is set to be a much brighter day. Still can't rule out some showers, mainly around northwestern coasts, perhaps just feeding inland and across northern parts of England at times. But overall a brighter day, plenty of sunshine, and with much lighter winds, it's likely to feel much more pleasant compared to this afternoon. That's away from northeastern coasts of Scotland though, still some blustery winds here and still plenty of showers moving through. Now, heading into Wednesday, we'll see a bit of a split in the weather. Outbreaks of rain across the south, some blustery winds. This rain could linger for a time across central and parts of southeast England. But to the north of this, plenty of clear skies, plenty of sunny spells, still just a few showers around coastal areas. And to finish off the week, likely to see some foggy and frosty mornings, but still plenty of sunshine by day. Bye for now.
expect a warm front, moving from the kitchen right through to the rest of the house. Boxed boilers, sponsors of weather on GB News.
Imagine getting a call to tell you that you've won £50,000 in tax-free cash, our biggest cash prize of the year.
Oh my God.
That's a big surprise.
Oh my God. This is amazing.
I'm in shock. That is absolutely fantastic.
Thank you.
For your chance to win £50,000 cash, text cash to 63232. One entry costs £2 plus one standard network rate message, or text bonus to 63232. 5 entries cost £5 plus one standard network rate message. Go to gbnews.com/win. Entries start from just £2. You can call 0903 681 3232. Calls cost £2 plus your network access charge. Or post your name and number to GB10 PO Box 8690 Derby DE1 9TT. UK only. Entrance must be 18 or over. Lines close at 6 p.m. on the 31st of January. Please check the closing time if listening or watching on demand. Good luck.
Good Afternoon Britain isn't just about us. The wonderful thing about this programme is it's about everyone watching. It's an interactive programme.
Well, there absolutely is something to see here, and we're going to be talking about it more. Whether it's breaking royal news, Will, please bring us up to date, or indeed a particularly punchy speech in the House of Commons.
Very, very curious.
We bring it to you live, and then we bring you live reaction as well.
That's Good Afternoon Britain, weekdays from midday.
Only on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Welcome to State of the Nation, daily plunge into the stories shaping our country. I'm Jacob Rees-Mogg, and Monday to Thursday we bring you the insights, the facts, the truth about how our country is being governed. Because what happens in Downing Street matters down your street. Tune in to State of the Nation every Monday to Thursday, 8 to 9 o'clock. Only on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
It's 10 p.m. This is Patrick Christys tonight with me, Ben Leo.
We have now drawn a line under the inheritance that I face. Public finances are now on a firm footing.
The Chancellor once again says the government inherited an economic mess. The best GDP figures in decades when they took office says otherwise. So, are Labour just taking the biscuit?
We would like to continue to be a major investor.
We'd like that too.
Going forward. It's becoming harder to understand what the case for investment is.
The boss of McVitie's there. So which biscuit best represents this government's progress so far? Also tonight.
Accept it's difficult target. It's an achievable target, but it's not about telling people how to live their lives. I'm not interested in that. I am interested in making sure that their energy bills are stable.
He said you won't be lectured on how to achieve net zero, but the chair of the Energy Committee, his own MP no less, completely contradicts him. The first of tomorrow's newspaper front pages are here shortly, and my panel are ready to go. I'm joined by Daily Express columnist Carol Malone, campaigner and political activist Samuel Sweek, and former MP and chairman of the Conservative Party, Jake Berry. And what do you reckon Donald Trump will say to Sadiq Khan's invite?
I'd like to use this opportunity to invite President-elect Trump to next year's Pride in London.
Big second hour coming up, including Labour's economic fairy tale exposed. That's after your news headlines with Joe Casper.
Good evening, it's 10:01. I'm Joe Casper in the GB newsroom. 2 British tourists are missing after a boat sunk in the Red Sea off Egypt. The Foreign Office says it is supporting several British nationals and their families. 2 Brits are said to be among the 28 rescued. The governor of the Red Sea region said the yacht was carrying 44 people and a high sea wave hit the vessel, causing it to capsize in about 5 or 7 minutes. Rescue efforts are ongoing, led by the military and local officials. The Environment Secretary says more flooding is likely this week, following the devastation already caused by Storm Bert, which has claimed 5 lives. The storm, which swept across England and Wales over the weekend, brought torrential rain, flooding and an 80-mile-an-hour winds. In Northamptonshire, a major incident has been declared as heavy rainfall caused severe flooding, overwhelming local emergency services with more than 800 calls. Authorities there are urging the public to only dial 999 when there is a risk to life. 12 British soldiers have been injured in a major crash in Estonia involving 2 minibuses transporting NATO troops. 8 of those most seriously injured were airlifted to the UK, with 3 still in hospital. The crash on Friday involved 6 vehicles near the Russian border. Soldiers serving on NATO's Operation Cabrit were on their way back from their base in Tapa. An RAF jet was deployed to evacuate them, transferring them to the Queen Elizabeth Hospital in Birmingham. Rachel Reeves has ruled out tax rises for the rest of this Parliament as she defended her budget. The Chancellor told business leaders it has brought stability to the economy, saying public services must now live within their means. Speaking at the Confederation of British Industry conference, she said difficult decisions were needed to draw a line under the inheritance from the previous government. She also dismissed calls for big tax rises on businesses, saying the economy is now on firm footing.
We have now drawn a line under the inheritance that I faced. Public finances are now on a firm footing, and also our public services are funded in a proper way. And we've now set the envelope for those public services for the rest of this Parliament, which means we're not going to have to come back for more.
And in the US, prosecutors have moved to drop their criminal case against Donald Trump. Special counsel Jack Smith dropped all 4 felony charges against the president-elect related to his alleged attempts to overturn the 2020 presidential election. Mr. Trump, who was indicted in August 2023, faced charges including conspiracy to defraud the US and obstruction of an official proceeding. Those are your latest GB News headlines for now. I'm Joe Casper, Morning in an Hour.
For the very latest GB News direct to your smartphone, sign up to News Alerts by scanning the QR code or go to gbnews.com/alerts.
Good evening, hope you're well. Thank you for your company. Now, Sir Keir Starmer's Britain has become a soggy biscuit for investors. Don't listen to me, this is the Chief Executive of McVitie's.
Our greatest investment across all of our countries over the last decade or so has come to the UK. We would like to continue to be a major investor.
We'd like that too.
Going forward. It's becoming harder to understand what the case for investment is. At least small amounts one can understand, but the quantums that I think we need to make a difference in the growth rate of the economy are in the order of tens of millions every year. And in the last couple of years, it's just become a lot harder to really see how does that play out.
So it got me thinking, 6 months on, if Keir Starmer's government were a biscuit, what biscuit would it be? Well, certainly not a nice. I guess there's nothing nice about letting grannies freeze to death in the winter. What about Jammy Dodger? The PM did escape Lord Ali's gift scandal relatively unscathed, not bad. What about a digestive? There's been so much that's hard to stomach after all about this Labour government. Or perhaps this one, a border biscuit. I suppose our southern border is as about effective as something that's been routinely dunked in a mug of tea. What about this? The Oreo, full of fake crap. Reminds me of something. What is it? Actually, this is one of my own favourites. The Hobnob. Interesting. So, Hobnob wins, I think. Hobnob. Anyway, back to the serious point. The McVitie's boss is right, isn't he? This government was shouting from the rooftops about growth during the election campaign, and it's hard to see where that's coming from. In fact, the first 3 months of Labour being in power returned a paltry 0.1% rise in GDP. The new party line is now reminding the electorate about the so-called economic mess they inherited.
We have now drawn a line under the inheritance that I faced. Public finances are now on a firm footing, and also our public services are funded in a proper way. And we've now set the envelope for those public services for the rest of this Parliament, which means we're not going to have to come back for more.
Well, let's look at that mess in detail, shall we? They inherited the fastest growing economy in the G7, 0.7% growth in the first quarter of this year under the Tories, which was the best figures in decades. They inherited halved inflation, 2% in May, on target, the first time in over 3 years. It's now back up to 2.3% under Labour. The Bank of England started cutting interest rates in August, just a month after Labour took power, the first time in 4 years. And they cut again 5 days ago, and the base rate now sits at 4.75%. That, in turn, started seeing mortgage rates plummet. They dipped below 4% in the months after Labour took power, thanks to that Bank of England rate cut, saving homeowners thousands of pounds a year. Since the budget, though, they've now rocketed again to 5.5% on certain products. That's despite the Bank of England cutting base rates. Well, very well done to you, Labour. And bills had been falling since summer last year too. Labour promised, do you remember, an immediate £300 cut to our bills if they were elected. Well, Ofgem announced on Friday that the energy price cap has now rocketed again. Gas and electricity bills will become even more expensive in January. So forgive me for asking, are Labour simply working with a mess of their own making? And I'm not just talking about the crumbs of biscuits on their desk either. Let's get the thoughts now of my panel. Daily Express columnist Carol Malone, campaigner and political activist Samuel Sweek, and the former MP and Conservative Party chairman Jake Berry. Sorry, guys, I left the biscuits over there. You'll have to wait.
You're eating one, aren't you? You're actually eating
it's
one.
Stuck in. It's my silly stunt, and it's got stuck in my teeth. There we go. Serves me right. What do you reckon about this? Over and over and over again.
She sat there today and she lied again. She said the economy's on a firm footing. No, it is not. GDP fell by 1% in September. That cut production output by 0.5%. You know, there's talk last week of a recession coming. Her tax reforms are causing huge concerns among businesses. The bond markets today are saying they are more nervous about this than they were about Truss's budget. And she's changed the fiscal rules to be able to borrow 50 million more. So she's borrowing like 150 million quid, which has to be paid back. So our economy is not on a firm footing. And because all these businesses have said now that her reforms are going to mean they're going to have to lose jobs and they're going to have to rethink their recruitment. So they're going to earn less money, those companies. And so she's going to have to retax again to keep the money up. She's just lying. And this is a woman who has no... We know what her history is now in the economy. I mean, she was a...
She was an economist at the Bank of England.
She was not. She was a trainee economist at the Bank of England. She was a trainee at the end of 2 years when she left the Bank of England. I think Richard Tice today described her as a call centre manager. She was dealing with admin. But anyway, but now she's running the economy of her country. She's talked for years about how she knows how to run a country. She has no idea.
Samuel, should we be listening to the McVitie's boss?
I think, you know, we have to look at the way that this is balanced as an argument. Obviously, Rachel Reeves here is talking about the government's expenditure, the government's taxation policies, and the bosses of, say, McVitie's and others are, of course, looking to protect their own businesses. But what has to be factored into this as well is that workers in this country, on average, have only made 16 quid richer than they were in 2010. There's so much missing from this conversation.
Where do you get that from?
That's the Office of National Statistics.
Doesn't surprise me. Okay. But what's happened to migration in that time?
Yeah. But I don't think that migration can be can be...
What, not at all?
I don't know.
Even just a slither, Samuel, no. And a population explosion of millions and millions, and you don't think that affects wage growth or GDP per capita?
What I do think needs to be taken seriously is that companies like McVitie's in the last financial year have made nearly £3 billion in profit.
Which is what they're in business for.
Good for them, of course. Of course. But that needs to be reinvested back into the workforce, who, as I've said, have suffered a real terms pay cut. Sorry, not real terms pay cut, but only 16 quid richer than they were in 2010. So the cost of living has obviously...
Should Reeves go after the McVitie's then and charge them more corporation tax, hikes?
Well, sure. I don't think it's a case of going after. I think it's about businesses being able to pay their fair share. And I think that when they're doing as well as McVitie's, as well as Tesco's, another one who have made close to £3 billion in profits, M&S as well. I think that we need to be
You sound like you're against companies making a profit. When they make a profit, they can employ people and employ more people.
Great, but they should also pay those people that they do employ.
Yeah, but what these companies are now saying, that the NI changes means that half of them are going to shed jobs now, not take more people on.
People said the same thing about the introduction of the national minimum wage. It's
how many McVitie's employees have you spoken to, Samuel?
How many have you spoken to?
Well, I don't know. I've at least got some biscuits tonight. I've done my
You've done your bit to support them.
Yeah.
Well, good for you. But I do think if ever of us did speak to them, I think none of them would say that, yes, maybe things are difficult for them. Maybe they would like to make a little bit of extra money. Their hard work that has obviously put profits into McVitie should be rewarded.
Jake?
Look, I just think the problem with Rachel Reeves, whatever her experience is, she doesn't understand what makes business tick. What do we not want people to do in this country? We don't want them to smoke. So we put tax up on cigarettes. So that's the other thing. We don't want them to drink too much. So we put tax up on alcohol. We don't want them to have too many sugary drinks. So we put tax up on sugar. Why then is she putting tax up on businesses? If increasing taxes stops you doing stuff, that good stuff that businesses are doing, creating jobs, paying for our NHS, funding public services, why are we discouraging them from doing it? And that, frankly, is what's reflected in those growth figures. If you increase taxes on business, they do less business. And you're going to see this with unemployment. We are heading for, I'm very sorry to say this, a big spike in unemployment after April next year because of this increase in national insurance, combined with the increase in the national living wage. Now, if you work full-time on the national living wage, you get $24,500. That means it costs that business nearly $30,000 to employ you. So that is a lot of money.
Why don't they understand it? Are you saying Rachel Reeves is incompetent at her job?
Yes.
Yeah, well, this week marks the
somebody.
This week marks the 150th anniversary of the birth of the greatest Briton, Winston Churchill, and he said back in 1904, for a nation to try and tax itself into prosperity is like a man standing in a bucket and trying to lift himself with a handle. That was true 120 years ago. It's true now, and that is why the Labour Party ultimately is failing this country.
I'll get last word from you in a second, Carol. Sam, do you think we need to tax more in this country? Is that what you're saying?
I think that we need to be looking at people who are making incredible profits, making, in my mind, obscene profits.
And encouraging them to do more of it.
We need to be ensuring that people who do pay their fair share to invest into public services and to pay their workers. There is a lot of wealth in this country, make no mistake. The distribution of that is shocking.
But do you understand if you treat people too unkindly, they'll just go off to, say, Dubai or somewhere else where they don't pay as much tax, certainly not income tax anyway, or capital gains, and they just won't stick around. And what's the proportion, Jake? The figure off the top of my head, is it something like the top 1% of tax contributors in this country pay? Is it a third?
No, top 10% of income tax payers pay 50% of income tax.
Wow, there we go. I mean, it's even,
but the other scary statistic is more people are predicted to leave Starmer's Britain as tax exiles than have fled Putin's Russia.
Yeah, and something. What was the figure that was released last week? Something like 4 million already have multimillionaires. They put their money elsewhere. Charlie Mullins, the plumber, was talking about it because he's taken his money out of the country. But Labour sees tax and sees success, and they want to tax it, and that's what they're doing. And when you tax success too much, you actually trash it. It's not a success anymore, and that's what they're doing. And you say, is Reeves very good at her job? No, she's not very good at her job. She's actually really bad at her job. There's nothing she did in that budget that any section of this country has agreed with. And it's not just because they're kicking up because they're making money. It's because what she's doing isn't going to work. It's going to trash this country. You never mind what Liz Truss was going to do. She's the one that's going to crash the economy. Rachel Reeves, not Liz Truss.
Samuel, why do you think that people who work hard and take risks and invest their hard-earned money, which, by the way, has already been taxed, and invest in assets or their businesses or so on, why do you think that people like you or your friends in, the Corbynista part of the Labour Party, why should you get a cut of that?
I'm not advocating for myself to get a cut of this.
Well, why should anyone get a cut of it?
What I'm saying is that can you consider that a business is doing well if it makes, say, this financial year $3 billion in profits, but its workers are lining up at food banks? Is that business doing well, or is a very small amount of people from the top of that business doing well? I believe that is like the signs of a rigged and broken system, which is weighed very much in the balance of the wealthy elites.
Are you generally anti-capitalist? Is that a philosophy?
I think it's quite clear that I'm anti-capitalist.
I think it is quite clear.
I think it leaves too many people behind.
But you see, if there were too many people like you, there wouldn't be any money to give to anybody. That's the point. People have to. It seems to me that you're resentful of people who make money, and you think that they should just give that away to everyone.
I'm not saying they should give it away. No, I'm saying that if they're doing well, good for them. Do they not want the rest of their country and their workforce to be doing well? You're saying good for them, and they should give it to everyone else.
Why don't you just work harder, Samuel?
Why don't I just work?
Or not you personally, but why don't you and your friends just work harder? Why don't you take more risks?
Would we say that to farmers?
To farmers?
Farmers, if we change the taxation on inheritance tax, would we say...
It's not quite the same thing.
It's quite the same if we're talking about a tax change.
We're talking about inheritance.
Yes, but we're talking about a change to taxes.
People couldn't work harder than farmers.
Right, I'm not saying I don't believe that at all, of course.
How do you work hard when you're dead? It's a death tax.
OK. Like you finish your point.
No, my point is, it's a silly argument to say that people should work harder when the system is rigged so far against people at the very bottom of the pile.
How is it rigged? No, people are...
We've got millions of people who are
rich.
economically inactive.
Yes. Millions. Was it 9 million or something economically inactive? 2.5 of those very young people under the age of 24.
But let's talk about in-work poverty. How many people...
But you talk about...
We're talking about people who don't actually work. We could have a conversation about
in-work poverty.
Yeah, I actually applaud the Labour Work and Pension Secretary today, who's come out and said we need to be tough with young people to try and get them back into the workplace.
I saw that.
Not actually just to save money, but to help with their mental health and their own well-being and their place in society. I think that's a great thing to do.
Doesn't sound like a bad policy, dare I say it, from Labour. OK, panel, you'll be back very shortly with the first newspaper front pages. Up next, though, the Labour chairman of Parliament's Energy Committee has just let the cat out of the bag. He's warned that the Prime Minister's net zero targets will force Britons to change their lives. That's despite Starmer saying the opposite, even just, 7 days ago? So is this yet more proof that the march to net zero is going to leave us shivering in the dark? Head of Policy at the Global Warming Policy Foundation, Harry Wilkinson, joins me next.
If you want your news to be straight talking... This is the nightmare for the Conservatives again. Down to earth. It's not just Nottingham where this is happening, is it? And most importantly, honest. Hard-working, middle-class taxpayers, they'll get their book thrown at them. Then catch me, Martin Daubney, Monday to Friday, 3 till 6 p.m. on GB News, Britain's news channel.
Hi there, I'm Michelle Dewberry and I'm going to take a second to tell you all about my show, Dubes & Co. We start off with the issues of the day. We then bring in both sides of the argument. We get rid of the disrespect. And then you throw me into the mix. And trust me, I'll tell it exactly how it is. And then, of course, the magic ingredient, you at home. We mix it all together and what have we got, in my opinion, the best debate show in town. Monday to Friday, 6 till 7 on GB News, Britain's news channel.
Every Saturday, 10 till 12, we'll bring you all of the news that you need to know. We'll also remind you that there is so much to smile about.
It's my favourite time of the week. I get to relax, enjoy some light-hearted stories, and let Ellie teach me about fashion too.
That's Saturday Morning Live, every Saturday, 10 till 12.
Only on GB News, Britain's news channel.
This is GB News, Britain's news channel.
Her name is synonymous with fashion. Karen Millen, the high street designer whose dresses have been worn by some of the world's most famous women, including the Princess of Wales.
Yes, but in a recent Daily Mail interview conducted by our showbiz juggernaut, as I call her, Steph Tetchy, 63-year-old Karen confessed she isn't immune from worries about her appearance.
Well, this summer, Karen took the plunge with a £35,000 facelift using the very latest surgical techniques. Now, to hear more of her story, we're delighted to be joined by Karen herself and consultant plastic surgeon Dr. Tunç Tiryaki, co-founder of the London Regenerative Institute. So, how did you two get together?
That was a meeting at the Parliament, wasn't it?
It was, actually, yeah, through mutual friends, really.
So you already knew of Tunç and you knew his expertise. How did you come to the decision to kind of go ahead with this? I was reading the Mail article and apparently one day you looked in the mirror. And I've heard this story so many times before,
yeah, I know,
from not least my mum and my nan,
yeah.
And they said they looked in the mirror and thought, goodness me.
I know. I think it's that menopausal thing when suddenly things just change. And, yeah, for me, it was coming out of lockdown almost, where I was probably on the back end of menopause, and I just, suddenly looked in the mirror and it was like, oh, my God, what's happened to me?
Because I guess I mean, for me, I'm 35, I still feel like a 20-year-old or even an 18-year-old. Does that change as you get into sort of your...
Unfortunately not, right?
Well, it does change to a certain extent, but, you know, I've always looked after myself, so I've always kept fit and looked after my skin. So, you know, it did come as a bit of a shock. I mean, I know, obviously, ageing happens to us all and we have to embrace that, but there's a certain amount that we have to put up with and then, you know, other things can step in.
GB News, the People's Channel.
Join me, Nana Akwe, for an informative, interactive news programme with a difference. It's fun.
No, you didn't say that, though.
surprised. I think there's an element of truth to that.
Join me from 3 p.m. every weekend, only on GB News, Britain's news channel.
Patrick Christys tonight with me, Ben Leo, only on GB News. Now, Labour MP and Chairman of Parliament's Energy Committee, Bill Esterton, might have just let the cat out the bag when it comes to the reality of the Prime Minister's net zero targets. When asked if people would be forced to change their lives to hit Keir Starmer's pledge to cut emissions by 81% by 2035, Esterton warns clearly whenever there is a big change, people have to change their lives. So, absolutely, yes. Well, look, that flies in the face of what the Prime Minister had to say at the COP29 climate summit just a few weeks ago.
I accept it's difficult target. It's an achievable target, but it's not about telling people how to live their lives. I'm not interested in that. I am interested in making sure that their energy bills are stable.
I'm joined now in the studio by Head of Policy at Global Warming Policy Foundation, Harry Wilkinson. Good evening, Harry.
Good evening.
OK, who's telling porkies then? Bill Esterton or his boss, Sir Keir Starmer? Are we going to have to change our lives?
We've heard so many times from Keir Starmer that he doesn't want us to have to change our lifestyles. But when you look at how Labour's actually going about net zero, we find they're telling us what to do at every stage, whether that's cars. They're pursuing the zero-emission vehicle mandate, which means there's a rising compulsory target for electric vehicle sales each year. They've just introduced what's known as the clean heat market mechanism. That means that a minimum number of heat pumps will have to be sold each year, and that will only rise each year. They've just raised at the budget air passenger duty as well, which will make it more expensive for people to go abroad on holiday. You know, they've said they won't do meat, but, you know, it's only a matter of time, so far as I'm concerned, before they're restricting or taxing meat further. So, and this is the approach that we've seen also under the last government when it comes to net zero. There hasn't been actually that expansive, more optimistic approach, which says, you know, how do we get emissions down in a way that doesn't restrict the way people live their lives? You have to have cheaper energy. It's as simple as that. And if we could do that, then people would adopt things like EVs and heat pumps without compulsion.
But isn't Bill Esterton just being honest with us? We are going to have to change our lives because, playing devil's advocate here, there's a climate crisis and we're going to be underwater by whatever year, and the Maldives is going to be at the bottom of the ocean. And if we don't install these heat pumps, if we don't go out and buy electric cars, if we don't stop eating juicy steaks with peppercorn sauce, then we're going to be stuffed.
Well, I think this is why the alarmist narrative is so unhelpful, which doesn't actually tie in with what the evidence is saying. You look at what the United Nations IPCC says. They say there's low confidence in any trends in flooding, droughts, hurricanes at a global level.
But, Harry, I always hear that 98% of climate scientists agree that we're in a climate crisis.
They agree that climate change is happening, that it's man-made. I agree with that. I don't have any problems with that. The point is, what do we do about it? And there's a huge range of opinion about what we should do about it. And rather than actually try and pick winners in every single field, we should just concentrate on, rather than having the most expensive energy prices in the world at the moment, which is what we do have, we could have the cheapest energy prices, and then the rest of the world would want to copy us as well. No one's going to be wanting to copy the country with the most expensive energy.
Harry, it feels like maybe the UK is the last disciple at the altar of net zero, because wasn't Keir Starmer the only Western leader at COP29? Is that right? Or am I
it was striking that, you know, he was the only G7 leader who went there at the start. Normally we have, you know, most major world leaders appear at these conferences. We also had something remarkable, what hasn't happened for a while, is that many countries actually left the negotiations. They came back and there was a deal in the end. But what it was reflective of was actually that these are becoming more and more tense. Developing countries are asking for more and more money. You know, the way that Western countries have got developing countries to go along with this is by promising money, more money. Yeah. And so each year when that money doesn't arrive, or at least not to the extent that they were expecting, we see many countries getting crosser and crosser. So this isn't working out diplomatically for us either.
So you're saying it's just it's a cash grab, basically?
Well, in our message to the world, we can't fix the world's problems on our own as the UK. But what we can do is show a shining example of how economic policy can be done well, and actually making sure that rather than just giving money to corrupt governments, we're helping to promote trade, bring down tariff barriers. So there's a much better way we could be doing this, rather than just pledging money, not delivering, upsetting many poorer countries who are concerned about climate change. But, let's see that investment go into practical solutions rather than more and more renewables. We've seen renewables don't actually bring down the cost of energy, they increase the cost of energy. And so by refusing to fund things like coal power stations, gas power stations, nuclear power stations, we're failing to supply the kind of infrastructure that much of the rest of the world needs to grow.
Yeah, OK. And the Prime Minister was in good company at COP29. I think the Taliban were there.
The Taliban were there.
Talking of corrupt governments, just briefly, what were they doing there? What's the point of that?
Well, the Taliban now represent the Afghanistan government. They seem to have no problem with the Taliban being there, despite everything else that they are doing. And people are really questioning the COP process now. How serious is it? And whether it's a matter of time, particularly with this Trump administration coming in, before the whole thing blows up.
Yep, indeed. OK, Harry Wilkinson, you're Head of Policy at the Global Warming Policy Foundation. Thank you for joining me tonight. OK, coming up, the very first of tomorrow's newspaper front pages have just landed. I'll bring you them very shortly. Back in a tick.
Hello, good evening. Welcome to your GB News weather update from the Met Office. After a blustery day, we are going to see winds ease into this evening, leaving a mix of clear spells and showers tonight, and it is going to be turning rather chilly under those clearer skies too. Storm Bert, currently sat to the northeast of the UK, will eventually move its way over to Scandinavia. It does leave behind some blustery winds and some outbreaks of rain for a time, though these will eventually ease away overnight. Still plenty of blustery showers though moving through, particularly around western coasts, and these may linger on for a time, bringing longer spells of rain at times too, particularly across parts of the south. Further inland across central and southeastern areas, we're likely to see plenty of clearer skies, so a risk of frost, perhaps even some fog patches by the time we reach tomorrow morning. So through around Scotland, we are still going to continue to see plenty of showers, mainly around coasts, though a few feeding inland at times too. Under clearer skies, though, it is going to be feeling chilly with a risk of frost. Still plenty of showers around coasts of Northern Ireland, northwest England too. Drier and clearer further east, and generally across parts of England and Wales, it is going to be a much clearer start to the day. Once again, a risk of frost, perhaps even some fog patches by the time we reach the morning. But overall on Tuesday, it is set to be a much brighter day. Still can't rule out some showers, mainly around northwestern coasts, perhaps just feeding inland and across northern parts of England at times. But overall a brighter day, plenty of sunshine, and with much lighter winds, it's likely to feel much more pleasant compared to this afternoon. That's away from northeastern coasts of Scotland though, still some blustery winds here and still plenty of showers moving through. Now, heading into Wednesday, we'll see a bit of a split in the weather. Outbreaks of rain across the south, some blustery winds. This rain could linger for a time across central and parts of southeast England. But to the north of this, plenty of clear skies, plenty of sunny spells, still just a few showers around coastal areas. And to finish off the week, likely to see some foggy and frosty mornings, but still plenty of sunshine by day. Bye for now.
This is Britain's Newsroom, where your voice matters.
It's just astonishing. With expert analysis and honest opinion, we don't just keep you informed.
We bring you unique perspectives you won't see anywhere else.
Can't argue with any of that. When the news happens, it happens here.
On Britain's Newsroom, weekdays from 9:30 a.m.
Only on GB News.
In the GB Newsroom, we bring you the news as it happens.
With our team of dedicated journalists across the UK,
we're ready to keep you up to date with what's happening every half an hour, every single day. Bulletins here on GB News,
the People's Channel,
Britain's news channel.
Nightmare commute? Kick it up a gear with GB News Radio. You can listen online and on DAB+ and on the GB News app. We're also on TuneIn and the Radio Player apps. From the school run to rush hour, get revved up with GB News Radio. We are the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Hello, welcome back. The first of tomorrow's newspaper front pages have just dropped. Let's start with the Daily Mirror. Mud, sweat and tears, landslide terror, battered towns and shattered lives as flood clean-up begins. The Daily Mail. No more tax rises, insists Rachel Reeves. The Chancellor defends the budget but says public sector must now live within its means. Yeah, right. As CBI bosses claim Labour has milked business. The Eye. Public spending cuts on the way from 2026 as Reeves vows no more tax rises. The Daily Star. All I want for Christmas is you. The number of loyal pets being dumped in the run-up to Christmas has risen by 50% as people struggle to make ends meet. That's awful. Stop buying animals for the sake of it. The Metro. Starmer, I'll make spiking a crime. I thought it already was. The Times. Britain isn't working, admits PM in jobs push. Starmer reveals plan to beat long-term sickness. He says Britain simply isn't working and bosses must get better at keeping the long-term sick in their jobs. And the Daily Telegraph, Reeves tax rises are milking us, says bosses. I'm joined again by my panel. Now, guys, do you think Rachel Reeves is telling the truth when she says no more tax rises? Do you believe her?
No, she's moving her lips, so no, I don't believe her. Of course she's not saying this. You know, as we said earlier, you know, if jobs are going to be cut, which is what the CBI says businesses are going to do, and they're going to stop their recruitment plans, they're going to make less money, and so she's going to have to tax more. So, no, I don't believe a single... I think what she's saying this for now is to placate businesses, is to placate people like the guy from McVitie's, who we just had in the programme before, who's saying he'd like to stay here in Britain, but maybe he won't be able to. She's trying to placate those people, get them calm, get the city down, and that's all. I don't believe her, though.
Jake, your thoughts? I mean, surely, which taxes could they put up again if they wanted to?
Well, they always seem to be able to find a new one, don't they? But, I mean, this is a really, really silly thing for any politician to say. Think about George Bush in the 1990s, read my lips, no new taxes. It's sort of Rachel Reeves' similar moment. She can't know what's coming around the corner. And the challenge that they have is so many of their plans for the British economy and their future spending powers are based on economic growth. And everything they are doing in our economy, you heard the CBI saying half of all businesses are thinking of laying people off, is mitigating against that growth. So she can't make this pledge because she doesn't yet know what the impact of her disastrous budget will be. It's very, very silly and not something anyone should believe.
Samuel, in this Times article about Britain not working amidst the Prime Minister in jobs push, there's a paragraph that says job centres will be told to offer a more personalised service to people looking for work. There are plans to stop them simply monitoring benefits and refocus on offering tailored support such as CV advice and AI help. I was having this discussion with someone the other day who was, they had lofty ambitions of being, I can't remember the career, they wanted to be an architect or something, but in the meantime, they were just trying to get any work they could. And they said that they had colleagues in that office who didn't want to do certain jobs because it was beneath them. So why are job centres having personalised work services for people in offering jobs? Why don't people just get out and work, whatever the job? Sure, if you need to earn money, just get out and graft, no?
Well, sure.
Do you agree with that premise?
Well, I mean, like, you know, I've done it myself, Ben. You know, I've done some horrible jobs in my time, but I mean, I can see that argument, certainly, but I think you have to look at... I'm just basing that on my own personal...
What's the worst job you've had?
I was in a call centre. I won't say who it was for, but it was...
That's not bad.
It was...
Soul-destroying, I imagine.
Everyone's much kinder to me here than they were there. And, but, no, I think that... I don't think there's anything wrong with the DWP or the job centres looking at tailoring and personalising the support they give to people. I think that's right that they do so, because I think they have to look at everyone as an individual, for sure. And I do think that they need to invest and look into doing that, because I think long-term, that will keep people...
What happens if people, Sam, just don't want to do those jobs and they say no, they're on benefits? I heard a young guy on the radio today, engineer, qualified when he was 23, he's 30 now. He's never worked as an engineer, and he's never worked as an engineer. And the bottom line is he doesn't want to take any other job. What do you do with people like that?
Well, we can't. The reality is, Carol, we can't leave people in poverty and destitution. And so I can't speak for this individual here.
Arguably, they'd be doing it themselves if they're refusing to work because it's not their cup of tea, or they don't want to work in a call centre, or don't want to scrub toilets. They are choosing themselves not to work.
But again, we can't force people. I mean, I understand the point you're making.
Well, you can if you're paying the benefits.
But it would be completely, one second, just like unethical to let somebody just, you know. What do we do? Not give them any support as a country? Let them live on the street?
No, we say to them, do this job and earn the money for doing this job.
You know what I find so depressing about this, and I spent 14 years in government, and the Conservative Party oversaw this start after COVID and all these workless people. So, you know, this is something we should all be concerned about, is we have literally heard all of this before, and I'm sorry to say, I'm actually genuinely very sorry to say this. I want the Labour Party to succeed with this. I don't think it's going to make a difference. And the real problem that is coming down the tracks in terms of jobs, Angela Rayner's employment rights laws,
Yes.
which are going to cost the economy £5 billion. They haven't even come in yet. And if you're an employer and you're thinking of taking someone on who's maybe been out of work because of issues of mental health or personal health for some period of time, you are not going to give that person a job if on day one they can go on the sick and sue you for unfair dismissal. This is a perfect storm. This is what the CBI were talking about today, is the Labour Party does not get the economy. The government does not create jobs. Businesses create jobs. The government needs to get out of the way and help them make money to create their jobs. And this is the huge problem facing Britain.
It's because they're all, half of them are trade unionists. I mean, they've never had proper jobs in their lives. I
don't think there's one CEO in the entirety, or former CEO in the entirety of the cabinet. There aren't people in the front line of British politics now with real business experience, and that just makes politics weaker.
I mean, that's just insane to me that you've got a cabinet, a government of the leading G7 nation who none of them have hired anybody in their lives. They've got no business experience. I just don't understand how it was allowed to happen. Anyway, we all know that Sadiq Khan and Donald Trump haven't always had the best of relationships, but it looks like the Mayor of London has finally extended the olive branch to the President-elect.
I'd like to use this opportunity today to invite President-elect Trump to next year's Pride in London. I also invite him to attend Friday prayers with me, any Friday he wants to come to London, or a Hindu temple, or a Sikh Gurdwara, or a Jewish synagogue. I think it's really important to share the joys of the greatest city in the world with the President-elect.
What do you reckon, Carol Malone? Trump coming to Pride?
It's not an invitation, it's an ambush, so that he can accuse him of being homophobic and Islamophobic as well. You know, this is all because Donald Trump called him a couple of years ago a stone-cold loser and very dumb. And since then, Sadiq Khan has said, remember, you know, Khan started all this when Trump made his state visit last time he was president, and Khan authorised a blimp of Trump as a huge balloon, as a baby, with a nappy. And so now he wonders why the president doesn't like him. But he actually has tried to say again, he's pulled the race card yet again, and he says that Trump doesn't like him because of his race, his ethnicity and his religion, which is tosh. He doesn't just like him because he's a little pipsqueak politician who embarrassed him last time he was in the
Samuel, do you think that's true? Trump doesn't like Sadiq because of his skin colour?
Well, I don't know about that, but what I can say is that Trump would not be welcomed at Pride. Simple as that.
Oh, why not? I thought, hang on a minute. I thought you were all inclusive and hospitable towards everybody. What happened to that?
No, for sure, but I think that
as long as they agree with them.
Yes, exactly.
As long as you agree with me, you can come. Is that what it is?
Yeah.
I mean, sure, let's do you...
Sure, is that what it is?
Is what it is, Jake?
That Trump could only go if he agreed with it.
Do you think that he would go to Pride? Do you think he should go to Pride?
I've no idea. What I would like to see is... I would like to see...
That might not necessarily be appropriate for... I would like to see
President Trump extend an invitation to Sadiq Khan to go and see how they are dealing with knife crime in parts of the USA. Because Sadiq Khan, rather than making these silly statements, virtue signalling, making these silly statements, should be sticking to his knitting. Knife crime has gone up 40% in London since Sadiq Khan became mayor. That is hundreds of mothers, brothers, children whose family member will not come home. People are literally dying on the street because of his failure with policing, and he's there making stupid quips about President Trump coming to Pride. He is a disgrace. He needs to stick to his job and save young black men on the streets of London. The vast majority of these victims are young black men. That, to me, is racist, the fact that he is allowing young black men to die on the streets of London and doing nothing, as far as I can tell, to reduce knife crime.
What do you think about that, Samuel?
Obviously, the scourge of knife crime is horrendous. Do
you think he's a failed mayor, Sadiq Khan?
I don't think he's a failed mayor, no. I think that, you know, there's a lot of things that Sadiq Khan...
What has he done right? Tell us what he's done right.
Free school meals. I think that...
OK, well, let's tell you what he's done wrong. Transport for London has had to be bailed out at least 6 times in the last 5 years because he runs it so badly. Okay, so free school meals might be a good thing, but when you've I can't think of a word a bad word. When he's trashed the transport system of this great city.
Yeah, finish your point.
May just coming back on the point about knife crime, which is something that has factually been on the rise throughout the country. And I don't hold the blame on that on Sadiq Khan specifically.
Do you not?
I don't, no. I don't think Sadiq Khan is responsible for people going out and stabbing one another. What I do think is the breakdown of society, the fabric of society caused by years of cuts and austerity.
Oh, it's the Tories' fault.
Well, I'm not saying it's just the Tories' fault. There's a lot of things that led to this. When you're in government,
he is the head of the Metropolitan Police.
When you are in government for 14 years,
but
Khan's
been mayor for the last 8. Is it 8?
Yeah. But he's the head of the Metropolitan Police, and knife crime's gone up by 40%. How can you say he's not failing the people of London when it comes to knife crime?
Yeah, if you say that Sadiq Khan has failed the people of London, that's fine. Then you have to, with one hand, say that, but with the other, take that you were in government for 14 years, Jake. But there's a failure on the part of the Tory government too.
He's in charge. That's his job. That's what he's paid for. That's what he's given millions for every year, to run the police force and to run transport.
I guess what Samuel's saying is, if you're going to put the blame on Sadiq, then you also have to put the blame on the Tories.
Why?
Well,
he gets money to run the capital city, and he's not running it.
But I think the point Samuel's making, if I may, I don't want to put words in your mouth, is that knife crime's going up across the entirety of the United Kingdom. That is correct. It is disproportionately going up in the City of London, where Sadiq Khan is head of the police. Look, we've had the disgrace of these non-crime hate speak cases. The police are not concentrating on the things that matter to people, like keeping their kids safe on the streets at night. It is a tragedy that people are not returning home, and Sadiq Khan thinks it's more important to mess around with internet. He's got no international politics responsibility. Why does he just do what he's paid to do?
Is why I refuse to live in London. I have a 4-hour round-trip commute every day. Lucky me. Samuel, last question. Do you think Donald Trump is a homophobe?
I don't know if Donald Trump is a homophobe. I do know that Donald Trump...
Why wouldn't he be welcome at Pride then? Just quickly, because we're running out of time.
Well, I mean, we can come on to it in a minute, but if we look at safer things like, his trans ban in the military, which was a staple of his last presidency.
We'll continue. We'll continue that next in the next segment. More of tomorrow's newspaper front pages are coming in just a tick. Don't go anywhere. Back in a sec.
Headliners. Tomorrow's papers tonight, every night from 11 p.m.
This is about pulchronomics, which is the often hidden, often controversial economics of beauty. And there's this guy, he's called, here it says Anil Hamamesh, but I think they've missed out the D, so I'm guessing he's Daniel rather than Anil, which he might be, though. He might be or he might be anal for an Anil Hamamesh, maybe. That's his unfortunate name. But basically, he's looked into how ugliness affects people, and it turns out he's discovered that ugly people are less attractive. And that affects them for the rest of their life. Now, where this does get interesting, it is worrying because, of course, this is going to lead to the ugly rights movement, ugly pride march down some dirty back street. And but I remember hearing about this at the time. People born in the UK between March 3rd and March 9th, 1958 were part of this massive survey that was done, which was finding about what would happen to them later in life, and it went through a number of different factors. But I didn't know this. The teachers were also asked to rate their pupils on attractiveness.
Yeah, it's a bit pedo-y.
But yeah, I mean, I don't know whether that would wash now, but it was bone structure and where they're symmetrical, that kind of thing.
You should probably really have a committee of at least half a dozen teachers. Take a sort of standardised view across that. You might get a different point of view from the biology teacher, from the Latin master.
You suggest this to a school, and then we can see if we get it going.
It's interesting, though. I don't know whether you're aware of this, but generally speaking, it is understood within sort of psychological, psychometrics and so on, that IQ is the thing that most closely maps your outcomes, generally speaking. But the idea of beauty is the one that isn't discussed. And there is genuinely a theory that this is actually the great determinant of your life chances.
GB News, the People's Channel.
Hello, welcome back. More papers have just dropped, starting with the Daily Express, which leads with bank holiday thank you to nation's heroes. Britain will say thank you to the greatest generation with bonus bank holidays to mark the 80th anniversary of the Second World War. Great stuff. I applaud that. I know lots of lefties will say, no, it costs too much money, but a great cause. The Guardian, Labour makes pledge to ensure no young person is left behind. The Premier League joins scheme to get jobless into work or education. And Donald Trump criminal cases are dropped. Special counsel prosecutors dismissed the 2 federal criminal cases against Donald Trump in separate court filings yesterday. Which brings us on to our next story. I'm joined by Daryl. Daryl. Daily Express columnist Carol Malone.
Daryl Malone.
Daryl Malone.
Hello.
Campaigner and political activist Samuel Sweek and former MP and chairman of the Conservative Party, Jake Berry. OK, let's get stuck into this one. Reports from the US today suggest Donald Trump is planning to remove all transgender people from the military. So the president-elect will use an executive order to enforce the change, which could come as soon as his first day in office, which, off the top of my head, I think is January 22nd. It would lead to the dismissal of thousands of military personnel at a time when the US have already fallen desperately short of their military recruitment targets. So, Carol, I believe it's around 10 to 14,000 people. What's behind this? You've got a theory.
I just heard a person who's been serving in the military for 14 years talking about this today, because when I first heard this, I thought it sounded a bit unfair and a bit wrong. But this military person said that people who are transitioning, and it takes a lot of years to transition, are taking medication. And when you take medication, you are not allowed to be deployed into active service in case there is an interruption in your medication, which you have to take regularly on a regular basis. And it has to be available to you at all times. So basically, you're signed up to fight, to be deployed to wherever, and you can't do that. So what this military person today was saying, that when you are deployed, you get as a service person, you get extra money for the very fact you can be deployed. What they were saying is, A, they can't be deployed, trans people, and B, that means that they get the same money as the rest of the military personnel for not going to war, for not fighting. So in a way, and they were saying that they're very upset and angry, the military, at the thought in this country that trans people are not being deployed.
Got it. OK, well, that makes sense. I was kind of wondering today. I thought maybe because gender dysmorphia or dysphoria, whatever it's called, is a mental illness, and maybe that's why.
It's about medication.
You wouldn't be sent to war with anxiety or something like that. But Sammy, what's your thoughts on that? Do we need to introduce this in the UK?
No, this is preposterous nonsense. I think what we need to... I think, firstly, we need to recognise that trans people have been serving in the military, not just in the United States and the UK, around the world for years and years. And this has never been a conversation. This has never been an issue. And I think this is a dangerous leaning from Trump into culture war issues that... I mean, really, I'm never going to be a huge defender of, like, the army or increasing defence spending. But what I will say is that there's definitely more honour and courage in those 14,000 or so trans people serving the US military than there is Donald Trump, who famously actually dodged the draft as a young man.
What about the argument I just said, that they're not allowed to be deployed? So as soldiers, they cannot fight. So that is the argument that is being used there in the States.
Expelled entirely from the military, though, Carol?
No, they can serve in the military in an admin capacity or at home here, but they cannot be deployed to fight because they have to take...
He's going to expel them all. He's going to kick them all out.
Well...
But it's only like people who fought in Afghanistan. I had the privilege in my time in Parliament about going to see people who were being rehabilitated from horrendous injuries they had in Afghanistan. And then, tragically, as soon as they recover, the first thing the British Armed Forces do is get them to leave the British Armed Forces because actually it's a fighting force. I think this is quite a blunt instrument, and I think all of the... it's a very, very complicated area, but I do hear what Carol says about if it is a fighting force and for a medical reason, whatever the cause of that may be, they are unable to fight, then, maybe it should be like the British Armed Forces, which says, if you're unfit to fight, you can't remain in the armed forces.
Got it. Interesting debate. Right, we're very short of time, but just enough time for GBUJ. Carol, will grace us Britain.
Get somebody else's first, because I can't find mine.
Yeah, sure. So mine this week is the... Amazon workers who are taking action this Friday, fighting for fair pay and treatment in the workplace in Amazon in the UK and in about 20 other countries around the world.
Jake?
Well, mine is the gritters that were out in Scotland for Storm Bert. They have some brilliant names: Bear Chills, Grit and Bear It, Ready, Spready, Go, and Penelope Grit Stop, which is my personal favourite. But they've been working hard to keep Scotland moving. OK. Yeah, actually, when I went to see Eric Trump in Aberdeen last week, they're everywhere and they do such a good job. But I was thinking, if this was London or the South East, we'd be stuffed. Carol?
Right, my greatest Brit, he's what's an honorary Brit? It's Elon Musk, because he's picking for us all when he supports this petition, when he says Britain has had enough of this Labour government and its tyrannical police state it's created. He's dead right.
OK, the winner is Elon Musk. He paid $44 billion for Twitter, arguably too much, but he's now got some of the biggest influence in the world, especially over the US government. So, Elon Musk, thank you for saving free speech. Your union jackass.
Mine is Shabana Mahmood, who is the Justice Secretary, and she is now, she's saying that she's going to vote against the assisted dying lying, Bill. Okay. She's using her religion to persuade her constituents, and this is why she has every right to believe what she believes, but she has no right to use her religion to change the law.
OK, Samuel?
Another Labour MP, it's Bayo Alaba, who's a Labour MP in Southend, who has been waxing lyrical about rogue landlords and how unimaginable the plight of homelessness is,
Don't tell me he is one.
Kicking out his own tenants, a young mother of 2.
OK, but why, though?
Why did he do it? I was just going to say why.
Why is he kicking them out?
Because he can. That's the power that he has.
The
point is immaterial.
No, he just can't. You just can't do that. There are laws around it.
I think he might be the winner, but my person is a lady called Helfina Eddie Evans, who accidentally threw away her ex-now boyfriend's hard drive. What a surprise. It happened to have £569 million of Bitcoin on it. And her ex-boyfriend is now suing the local authorities to be able to go and look in the dump or the tip or the landfill to try and dig up his £500 million of
Bitcoin is approaching $100,000 per piece, and if you got in like this lad did at around $6 a piece, you'd be laughing, but not if your girlfriend throws it away. I'd be certainly dumping her without a second thought. It would have been your lad, the Labour MP, what's he called?
Bayo Alaba.
Yes, but until I know why he's evicted them, I'm not just like, you know...
You can't just say because he can.
It's a wider statement about how he has that power to be an MP.
It's hypocrisy.
To wax lyrical on the topic and then do the exact same thing that he's been...
Thank you very much. It's been a pleasure tonight. Really appreciate your company. Coming up next, it's Headliners, presented by Simon Evans. Simon, what's going on?
Hello, Ben. Well, we've got a marvellous show tonight. We've got some wonderful new front pages just arrived. Joe Biden is pardoning a Turkey, which is a nice contrast to his ability to introduce World War III in the dying months of his presidency. We have an all-female Sports Personality of the Year lineup coming, and we have Tembry Wells featuring in not one but 2 stories, having been in the news darkness for most of the year. Worcestershire is coming up strong at the end of it.
Great stuff. Thank you very much. I'll be back again from tomorrow. A few of you asking tonight, where's Patrick? He is back Monday next week. Up next, it's Headliners. That's after your weather. Have a good night and see you tomorrow.
Expect a warm front, moving from the kitchen right through to the rest of the house. Boxed Boilers, sponsors of weather on GB News.
Hello, good evening. Welcome to your GB News weather update from the Met Office. After a blustery day, we are going to see winds ease into this evening, leaving a mix of clear spells and showers tonight, and it is going to be turning rather chilly under those clearer skies too. Storm Bert, currently sat to the northeast of the UK, will eventually move its way over to Scandinavia. It does leave behind some blustery winds and some outbreaks of rain for a time, though these will eventually ease away overnight. Still plenty of blustery showers though moving through, particularly around western coasts, and these may linger on for a time, bringing longer spells of rain at times too, particularly across parts of the south. Further inland across central and southeastern areas, we're likely to see plenty of clearer skies, so a risk of frost, perhaps even some fog patches by the time we reach tomorrow morning. So through around Scotland, we are still going to continue to see plenty of showers, mainly around coasts, though a few feeding inland at times too. Under clearer skies, though, it is going to be feeling chilly with a risk of frost. Still plenty of showers around coasts of Northern Ireland, northwest England too. Drier and clearer further east, and generally across parts of England and Wales, it is going to be a much clearer start to the day. Once again, a risk of frost, perhaps even some fog patches by the time we reach the morning. But overall on Tuesday, it is set to be a much brighter day. Still can't rule out some showers, mainly around northwestern coasts, perhaps just feeding inland and across northern parts of England at times. But overall a brighter day, plenty of sunshine, and with much lighter winds, it's likely to feel much more pleasant compared to this afternoon. That's away from northeastern coasts of Scotland though, still some blustery winds here and still plenty of showers moving through. Now, heading into Wednesday, we'll see a bit of a split in the weather. Outbreaks of rain across the south, some blustery winds. This rain could linger for a time across central and parts of southeast England. But to the north of this, plenty of clear skies, plenty of sunny spells, still just a few showers around coastal areas. And to finish off the week, likely to see some foggy and frosty mornings, but still plenty of sunshine by day. Bye for now.
We can expect clear skies, leading to a light and warm day ahead. Lovely. Boxed Solar, sponsors of weather on GB News.
It's our festive treat to you. Your chance to win an incredible £50,000 in tax-free cash. Our biggest ever Great British giveaway. What would you spend £50,000 on in the coming year? Spectacular holidays, a brand new car, home improvements, or maybe you'd just like to save it for a special occasion. For your chance to win £50,000 cash, text cash to 63232. One entry costs £2 plus one standard network rate message, or text bonus to 63232. 5 entries cost £5 plus one standard network rate message. Go to gbnews.com/win. Entries start from just £2. You can call 0903 681 3232. Calls cost £2 plus your network access charge. Or post your name and number to GB10 PO Box 8690 Derby DE1 9TT. UK only. Entrance must be 18 or over. Lines close at 6 p.m. on the 31st of January. Please check the closing time if listening or watching on demand. Good luck.
GB News Breakfast. Every day from 6 a.m.
Millions are struggling to stay warm with the wet weather, the cost of living and, of course, cuts to fuel payments.
Yes, winter is fast approaching, so it's crucial to find cost-effective ways to save on your energy expenses whilst staying reasonably warm.
So joining us to provide advice on heating your home, or at least staying warm somehow, is one of the leading voices on lowering energy bills, Nick Miles. And you are very welcome in here this morning. I mean, a lot of people say, well, in the olden days, you just used to put on an extra jumper. But actually, it's more serious than that, isn't it? What is the best way, the most cost-effective way to keep your home warm?
Some of the bigger things is we need to do more things on insulating our properties, but actually sometimes, you know, it can be simple things like turning down a thermostat. You know, those that have got the luxury of being able to afford energy bills and keep their homes on the thermostat a bit too high. If you just turn it down by one simple degree, as long as you keep it between 18 and 22 degrees, can save up to 5 to 10% of your energy bill. So that's a kind of a very simple way of doing things, but, you know, it can be other little tips and tricks you can do as well.
Yeah, I was going to say, because I always get it when people say about this, but like 18 degrees is not warm for a house.
No, and it's